Alright, Gary, we're gonna start in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello, my name is Gary Gomes. I'm here at Greater New Bedford Cable TV. It's lovely to be here again with you talking about astrology in general and Vedic astrology in particular. I've been an astrologer for roughly 30 years. I have students from around the world. I have clients from around the world and here locally and in the U.S. And today we're going to talk a little bit more. I hate the fact that we've been focusing so much on eclipses, but it's an eclipse-heavy season. So we just made our way through a July 2nd solar eclipse, which really, as far as I can see, was not that damaging. I do know some people who were impacted fairly heavily by it. One person went through a relationship breakup, which I had spoken about in the previous broadcast. So not that individual, but this particular month is going to be very tough on relationships. And the other thing is another individual I know had a problem with a job. So basically, depending on your chart, depending on your individual chart and where the planets fall in it, eclipses can bring life-changing events. Those were certainly examples of eclipses. And what we're talking about right now we're between, this is July the 3rd, and so July 2nd we had an eclipse. July 16th we're going to have, so that was a full solar eclipse, and it was visible off the coast of South America and towards the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So it didn't interact with very many land masses here. It also came after what they call a Rahu-Ketu stationary direct. And Rahu and Ketu are essentially the lunar nodes responsible for eclipses. One of the reasons these are so important is because even though they're not really visible objects, eclipses, as you know, occur because of the interaction of the sun and the moon. The sun just manages to block out the moon, or the Earth just manages to block out the sun during a lunar eclipse. The moon just manages to form that lovely disk around the sun in a solar eclipse. Indian astrologers just consider them to be particularly difficult and troublesome, but they can produce and open up new opportunities for people. So that's always a plus. But usually it comes as some kind of disruption or cost. Sometimes the disruptions can be purely physical or purely mental. So a person may have a change of mind or heart about some activity they're engaged in. They may have some disappointment. They may see a way to break free of a situation they haven't enjoyed being in for a long time. I can tell you in one of the cases that I'm talking about, there was an ongoing discussion about whether or not the event should take place or not, and the decision was made for the individual. So essentially, those kinds of things, eclipses will tend to produce those kinds of sudden shifts in dynamics. But usually they're not. Sometimes you'll see them coming like far away. Like one of the changes came from. It's been building up for a while. One of the changes essentially happened pretty unexpectedly, but the individual also sensed that something was wrong. So usually, usually if a person's ill or is seriously ill, or has a problem, and eclipses, especially Ketu, is responsible for chemical addictions. I also heard of an individual having an adverse reaction to medicine over the past couple of weeks and passing away. So eclipse patterns tend to be disruptive. They can also produce opportunities, like you can have an opportunity to clear the air with somebody or break out and reach for a new opportunity. But one thing I've noticed with some eclipses in particular is, especially solar eclipses, people get very tired during solar eclipses. I personally have had major issues with sleepiness or tiredness over the past couple of weeks, and I've actually been having for fairly good sleep, fairly decent activity. Sometimes people get struck with insomnia. It kind of depends on the chart, to be honest. So before there's a gross generalization made about what eclipses can and can't do, I think one of the main things that you want to look at is look at the individual's chart, or look at, let's say, where your sun sign is. In particular, people who were born between roughly January 15th and February 15th are particularly vulnerable. Between December 15th and January 15th are particularly vulnerable. People born between June 15th and July 15th are particularly vulnerable to these eclipses, because the sun is in Sagittarius and Gemini respectively in an Indian astrology chart for these individuals. Also, people born with their sun in Cancer, which in Indian astrology would be between July 15th and August 15th, will be more susceptible to people misrepresenting themselves to them, or misidentifying things to them. So now, and people born actually around November 15th to December 15th actually have some optimistic energy coming in. People born between October 15th and November 15th the same, and people born between September 15th and October 15th will feel more adventurous and more action-oriented over the next few months. Not all signs are affected adversely by eclipses. The other signs that should do fairly well are people born between February 15th and January 15th. They'll have and February 15th, and March 15th. They'll have a lot of work to do, and home life may be a little bit disturbed, but they'll also have great opportunities for windfalls or sudden financial gains. People born between March 15th and April 15th will be generally very, very busy. People born between April 15th and May 15th will find themselves having a lot of courage, a lot of ability, a lot of stamina to do new things and to try new things, but they'll receive minor blocks. The good news is that over the next couple of months for that sign, K2 and Saturn will separate. So K2 tends to block activity, Saturn tends to slow them down. So those two planets will eventually separate, and by the end of the year they'll have a very lucky year, because Jupiter will be entering Sagittarius in October. The other signs that we're looking at, we already covered May 15th through May 15th through June 15th is going to be Taurus rising, and those individuals will have good opportunities for creativity, although they will have accumulating debts and also some home problems, but they'll be much more adventurous, much more dynamic, much more outspoken over the next couple of months, but also a little bit dissatisfied with their life. They'll be wanting to make some changes in their life. We've already covered between June 15th and July 15th, and July 15th through August 15th. August 15th through people born between August 15th and September 15th should have good financial prospects, good home life. Money will be strong for these individuals, although they will feel a little bit dissatisfied until July 16th. They'll feel a little bit hamstrung or prohibited in what they can do, and they'll have extra expenses next month. People born between, so I want to finish off the last of the signs, so we didn't finish off. People born between December 15th and January 15th, we already covered those. People born between January 15th and February 15th will be Capricorns in Vedic astrology, and those individuals will have, again, a lot of some problems with children, some problems with luck, but overall it's good for financial gains for them. It's good for financial prosperity and financial progress. The major things to keep in mind as we're approaching this particular eclipse on the 16th to the 17th of July is that, so I want to get the horoscope signs done before I do the general reading, because I think it tends to flow a little bit more easily that way. People born between roughly, so essentially we went over the effects of people born between certain signs and certain times of the year. The major thing we're looking at in terms of the lunar eclipse is this is going to be kind of an emotional roller coaster for some people. Now this is about 2 weeks away, but we're between the eclipses right now. The moon is actually fairly well placed by sign right now. It's in a good sign right now, and you probably won't start feeling negative effects of this eclipse really until around roughly the 15th of the month, and or the 14th of the month, excuse me. And the reason I'm saying that is because the moon's going to be in relatively benign signs up until that time, have relatively benign aspects and placements with other planets. However, on July 14th, the moon enters Scorpio, which is its most unwelcome place in the Vedic chart. So around that particular time, it'll be easy to be overwhelmed by work. It'll be easy to be overwhelmed by responsibilities. Now, the funny thing of it is, before the eclipse starts on July 16th, you'll feel a lot of possibilities coming your way. And the main reason for that is because Jupiter's in Scorpio over the next few months. So as the moon passes over Jupiter, you'll start to feel the weight of responsibility, but you'll also feel very, very optimistic you can do anything. And that particular placement is going to be, it'll make you ridiculously enthusiastic and willing to take on new assignments and new responsibilities and go for it. Just be really wanting to charge through and make big changes. That's good to do. It's good to start. However, around July 16th itself, you'll start to feel like you're depressed or your motivation has left. And the main reason for that is because not only will the moon be in a sign of Sagittarius, which is kind of a difficult sign in Vedic astrology, actually, to be truthful. So the first part of it is sort of like it wipes things out or it cleans things away. And so it's considered to be a very destructive. They have lunar mansions in Indian astrology, and right after you hit this high point with Jayeshtan, the lunar mansion, which is ruled by Mercury, which is very youthful and very ambitious, then you'll have this very destructive lunar mansion called Mula, M-U-L-A. Now, Mula is ruled by Ketu and is associated with the goddess Kali in Hindu mythology. Now, Kali essentially wipes out everything in front of her. She gets rid of the ego. She gets rid of a lot of things. Now, this may not necessarily be bad. She can actually destroy your enemies. And this particular eclipse can actually do a good job of that. But since it'll be going to the next sign at the time of the eclipse, it'll be going to a lunar mansion associated with Venus. It'll affect optimism, feelings of happiness or self-satisfaction. It'll also affect, to a certain extent, feelings of contentment and lack of belief in yourself. It's also aspected by that difficult Venus I told you about in the last episode. So basically, Venus stays in Gemini until July 23rd. July 22nd, July 23rd, then it transitions into Cancer, which is going to be a bit better for it. But it's moving from a friendly sign into an unfriendly sign, but still there's so much activity happening in Gemini right now, and the Saturn aspect isn't good. So it tends to make us depressed about relationships, or a little bit upset about relationships, or quick to anger. The quick to anger aspect will still remain for about another month or so, but it won't be quite as crazy or quite as unexpected as Venus's combination with Rahu. That tends to make people really say, I really have to get with somebody else. I have to break up. If they've been contemplating a breakup, they'll act on it. And essentially from the chart, and it'll take very little to set a person off, but essentially from the chart, Saturn's also aspecting, and Saturn's what they call a separative planet. So if Saturn's aspecting Venus, that can cause relationships to break up. If Venus is in the same sign with Mars, which it will be, it'll cause arguments but not breakups. So I think there's reason to be guardedly optimistic that between roughly July 23rd and the middle of August, Venus will be in a better sign. And around the end of August, Venus will be in a fantastic sign. It'll be in Leo, so that's going to be really, really good for people. The other thing to keep in mind, so people will feel like they're kings, or they can do anything, or they can charge forth and conquer the world. So that's really a good thing for most individuals. Again, it's going to depend on your chart, so I'm not going to say this is going to be true for absolutely everybody, but the mood will enhance it quite a bit. The other thing is, so the moon, going back to the moon on July 16th and the 17th, essentially the eclipse starts around, let me see if I can give you the exact time. It starts around 2:43 New Bedford time. Okay, so it's 2:43 in the afternoon. So basically what you'll have is people